Well, hello. 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 What's up? What's up? It's March 12th, Tuesday, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. It's been a few minutes since I've seen everybody. Hello. If you're here, if you're not here, get here. And I see some comments. Hello, Cash. It is your trigger buddy in the flesh, ready to trigger all things Cash and vice versa. Hey, Amy Ellickson. Good to see you. If you're just tuning in, say hello. Let me know you're here. If not, we always give a couple minutes to let people get in and get settled. So get in and get settled because we'll be starting in 2 minutes. Let's see. So if you're here, say hi. Let me know where you're from. Hey, Robert. Hi, Ethan or not Ethan. I'll take it. We don't know if it's me. It could be AI. Could be a filter. I don't know who would develop a filter that looks like this, but it's always possible. Never know. Hi, Teresa. Teresa. But good to see you, Asheville. Cool spot, great city. Hey, Dave Raven, good to see you. Hi, Diana from Ohio. Yep, if you're just joining us, we'll get started in another minute. Hey, Nathan, good to see you. We'll get started in another minute. Just say hi. Let me know you're here. Let me know where you're from. It's always good to see who's out there in the cyber world. And we'll get started momentarily. It has been a minute. Hey, Chad, good to see you. And my schedules are always weird, and I've been really busy with work, so I've had to have some amazing other advocates take the reins for a bit. But I'm here this week. I'm here next week, and then I'm not here on April 9th. But we do have back-to-back community conversations, which is really exciting. Unless I'm doing the numbers wrong, and then it's back now, and then end of March, and then anyway, it doesn't matter. Hello and welcome to Community Conversations. My name is Ethan. I'm a national advocate for the International OCD Foundation. Please keep saying hello. Let me know you're here. Hey, Love Lana, good to see you. Hey, Heather, it's good to see you. While I'm going through the housekeeping, keep saying hello. Let me know you're here. Hey, Erica, long time no see. It's great to see you. Valerie in the house, sending out lots of love and prayers to Val, who is a light in all of our lives. Stacy Rosenthal, good grief. I've never said that in my life, but sure. Teresa wrote, I'd love to start with some OCD stuff here in Nashville. I think that would be awesome. There's a fair amount of OCD resources in North Carolina and some really brilliant clinicians in North Carolina, but we are always down to create opportunities in different cities. And so we can talk more about that. With that, let me get through some quick housekeeping. Please keep saying hi. Let me know where you're from. So community conversation is intended to serve as educational content and not intended to replace therapy. For treatment-related questions, please be sure to work with your local provider or contact a local clinician. The IOCDF is not a crisis hotline. If you're in crisis or ever feeling suicidal or unsafe, please go to your local emergency room or call 911 or the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline by dialing 988. We want to create a safe space and be kind and respectful to everyone. At the end of the day, we're all here to support one another. And note this is being broadcast on several social media platforms and is being recorded. With that, Matt Bannister in the house. Good to see you. What's up, fam? Nathan Rice, there's no research in my town. Athens, I think you're referring to, Nathan. Yeah, it's tricky because so pre-COVID, it was very access to Michael Schramm, good to see you. Access was very limited in terms of big cities for the most part, or in and around the suburbs of big cities. Post-COVID, because of virtual access and basically every therapist opening up virtual practices and everything going online, it is a lot easier to access content and care virtually. So you don't necessarily have to be in a large metropolitan area to access treatment or care. You just need someone licensed in your state. So that can be someone in your state, but just in the city and you live somewhere else. Like, for instance, Nathan, if you're at Athens and need to access Atlanta, you have access to a number of therapists and opportunities in Atlanta. Although I do know some therapists in Athens and be happy to share those with you. Grace in the house. Hi, Grace. Good to see your name. I would say your face, but it's just a small picture. But I think one of the small silver linings of COVID was the access to care, research, and resources and content, based on the fact that virtual support groups and virtual clinicians and all of that, and really just being able to access from anywhere in your state, even if you don't live near the big city. So yeah, but so first of all, how is everyone doing? Fill me in. It's been a few minutes. What's going on? How are you feeling? How's your OCD? What would you like to talk about today? I definitely have stories. I've been traveling for 2 weeks. This is my first. I got back late last night, so this is my first day back at home, which feels great. I was in Los Angeles for 2 weeks shooting new commercials. Not OCD, different disorder. But it was fun to be out there and in my old stomping grounds for a bit, but even better to be home now. Yes, there are, Nathan, exactly, in Athens, but you can always access Atlanta as well, and I can definitely put you in contact with some amazing providers here as well. HG in the house, what's up? Oh, your oldest son lives in LA. That's awesome. Yes, it was good out there. The traffic wasn't too bad, which was new for me. Gas prices were $5.45, which was almost more than double what I pay in Atlanta. The food was amazing. It was really great to see family and friends. And yeah, overall we had a great shoot. Overall, everything went really, really well. So yeah, it was a successful trip, and now glad to be back home for a few minutes. All right, so don't make me tell a story, because I will. I've got stories. You're so welcome, Sam. Good to see you. Where are you driving? So how's everyone doing? Fill me in. Hit me with some questions. If not, I'll create a topic. And I can talk about some things as well. Okay, Dusty, I'm having a hard time with intrusive thoughts. I'm so sorry. I'm sure you're not the only one in this room. I'm having a hard time with intrusive thoughts as well lately. Are you open to sharing a little bit more, and maybe we can support each other and give insights? That's about right, Robert. Story, please. Once upon a time, there was a short little man named Ethan who lived in a straw house. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate that. Yeah, that was in Los Angeles. Now we're back in Atlanta. So I'm curious how everyone is. So I will share a little bit. So I've been dealing. Well, here we go. Phil, at 7:08 p.m. Is there such a thing as treatment resistant in your opinion, as in someone has exhausted all approaches? Great question. So yeah, thank you, Amanda. I appreciate that. So I have mixed feelings about this, and let me sort of caveat this by suggesting or saying that I am not a clinician. I am merely an individual with OCD and related disorders. So I have two opinions on this that can simultaneously exist. The first one is that I do believe there is treatment resistant OCD, in the sense that perhaps not all current treatments work for folks. That isn't to say there's a lot of gray area with all the treatments. I don't think that exposure and response prevention is necessarily a treatment that works for everyone. I think it is the first thing that someone should try, because it is the gold standard. It works with 60 to 70% of individuals who try it. It wasn't effective for me early on in my process, though was later on. So, and then there's a number of different modalities of treatment, both cognitive and biological treatments like TMS or DBS or ketamine or all kinds of off-label treatments. So it's a tricky word with treatment resistance. And again, this is just my personal opinion. I do think I would argue that I was treatment resistant when I was at my worst, because I tried everything and nothing worked. And we were even talking about surgery. And then some pretty intense interventions occurred, which allowed me to flip my thinking and engage in treatment in a way that I hadn't before, where it was helpful. So I do think, depending on people's circumstances, severity of OCD, environmental input, output, things like that, that yes, people's OCD can be treatment resistant. That doesn't mean though that can't change down the line based on a combination of treatments. It may just appear treatment resistant based on the treatments that people are trying. The second piece of that is I actually don't believe that. So with that being said, I actually don't believe that OCD is treatment resistant. I believe that science and research and new modalities of treatment are just slow. So it isn't our OCD failing us, or we're not failing our own treatment. It's science and research sort of failing individuals with OCD. So in other words, we're too far behind. Research isn't happening fast enough. People are doing amazing work, but we've had the same medications for the past 30 years. We've had, we have new treatments constantly being researched, but now we're just starting to see a massive pickup. So when I say, I don't believe OCD is treatment resistant, what I mean is I don't think in the future it will be. I think that there are treatments out there that are being researched now or that will be developed that will be 100% effective on OCD. That's my opinion. I believe that. It isn't a scientific opinion, but I truly believe that. So at this time, I do think there are treatment resistant. That doesn't mean that there aren't things that people can do. That doesn't mean that if you've engaged in any type of treatment and it didn't work, that you have treatment resistant. I think the belief that someone has treatment resistant OCD obviously impedes treatment and wellness because it eliminates hope. And without hope, what are we fighting for? Right. So I know for me, when I was told, oh, he has treatment resistant OCD, I immediately went, oh, I have no way of getting better. So F this. Right. So I definitely think there's we have to keep hope alive regardless of what people are telling us. With that being said, though, based on a variety of situations and subtypes and access to care, I do believe some individuals can have treatment resistant OCD. But with that, I also think that inevitably science and research will catch up to what we're going through, and everyone with OCD will be able to be effectively and affordably treated in a way that is helpful. And until we have a cure, at least, help us live a more value-driven, successful, and beautiful life. So that's my 2 cents on treatment resistant. I'd be curious to your opinion because I am not the only opinion on here. So if anybody wants to weigh in on Phil's question, which is a very good question, I do truly believe, though, that science is late to the party, and as soon as it catches up, and it is catching up, some companies are doing some amazing things. Academia and universities are researching some amazing things, and as those sort of come to the forefront and they become accessible to individuals, I think we'll see the prominence of treatment resistance become less and less. For lack of a better example, look at AIDS in the 80s, right? It was a death sentence, and now it's something you can live with, or maybe even curable in terms of, how your T cells appear on a blood test. So, and because everybody was all in on that, right? They acknowledged it was a major problem. It was an epidemic, and we need to do something about it. And that is what we're here doing. It's what the IOCDF is doing. We are working very, very hard to leave a giant footprint on the world to let them know, hey, OCD is an issue. It's a problem. It affects way more people than you think it does. And it creates a lot of disability. It isn't just wanting things neat and clean and checking the stove and so forth and so on. I think once we do that, we'll see the level of care, types of care, and access to care skyrocket. And that's why we're on here doing what we do. But great question, Phil. And please feel free to follow up. Grace at 7:08 p.m. What are some coping skills you like to use surrounding tough anniversaries? Great question. So tough anniversaries, I think can mean a number of things. I think that, it can be a non-OCD related incident, whether it's a death or an accident or something traumatic that happened in your life. I can think of anniversaries. I have an anniversary of the time that I had my first panic attack in math class, which sent me down a spiral to drop out of high school before I went back. So that's in November. I know exactly what it is. That Friday I get kind of weird to be like, oh man, that's when it all started. And then of course there's the holidays for people and different periods of time. So I think anniversaries can be challenging. We also, I'm sure, have different months where it's like, oh, this month for some reason has been a weird, bad month every year for the past 4 years, and there's no rhyme or reason why. So it's a great question. I think coping skills are recognizing that the past doesn't equal the future. I think staying as present as possible and not trying to let the past determine what this anniversary will hold. That doesn't mean that, so there's twofold. One is, am I going to experience the emotions that are surround this day? Am I going to experience the thoughts? And most likely, yes, you will, especially if it's a life experience, an accident, a death, like I said. And we have to make room for those things and we have to mourn those things. Even OCD related things or PTSD related things or mental health related things. I think the emotions that we experience because of anniversaries are human, real life emotions, and we have to make room for them and sit with them and appreciate them and let them be there without trying to push them away and just feel them, and that can be really uncomfortable. However, the anticipatory anxiety that leads up to an anniversary and then the day of, when we're possibly worried of that thing happening again or feeling sick or just having tons of anxiety, I think those are things that we can use coping skills around. Meaning, as you lead up to the anniversary, being open to feeling the feels, being open to expecting that you may feel a certain kind of way, that it may not be the best day, and being okay with that and not trying to change it, just trying to embrace it, accept it, and coexist with it. And then, for me, there's some anniversaries that I had where I'm afraid that thing is going to happen again, and then it's really about sitting in the moment and being present and not living in the past or projecting onto the future, but simply acknowledging that that was then and this is now, and I'm going to live my life. And if something happens, that then I'll cross that bridge when I come to it. Until it does, I'm going to do the best I can to navigate that. And so those are just some ways I approach, at least cognitively, and look at it. Obviously, there's things you can do in the moment, but I think really embracing this idea of not trying to be perfect on those days, not anticipating to have this incredible, beautiful day, and not putting the expectation on yourself to have that day. Keep it real. This is a hard day. This is a shitty day. This is a tough day. I'm going to do the best I can, and at the same time, know that I'm most likely going to experience some feelings and some thoughts that I don't necessarily want to have. And if I don't, then that's just icing. And if I do, then it's not a surprise. And to not judge yourself for feeling them or not judge yourself for having a harder time getting out of bed that morning. And really just sitting in the moment and embracing those things and recognizing that there's a valid reason why you're feeling that way. There's a valid reason why you're thinking those things. But you're a year later, um, and you are moving forward with your life in some way or the other, and taking comfort in that and continuing to take one step forward. Um, Sam Fadden, I'm driving to the airport in Boston to do a lot of self care, special interest, and ASD be whack. Also being spontaneous. I'm not laughing at your ASD. I just like the whack. Also being spontaneous and going to stay at boyfriend's house unplanned. Love spontaneity. Spontaneity is so hard. OCD loves rigidity. It doesn't like flexibility. And I'm therefore not the most spontaneous person. Um, yeah. So in general, I like to have things pretty planned out. So I'm always a huge fan of being spontaneous and just doing something out of nowhere. So Sam, go. That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm glad you're doing self care. It's so important. Um, that girl loves the airport. I like the airport. I was just there yesterday. I don't like LAX, but Hartsfield's okay. Um, so Dusty wrote 7:08 p.m. Just intrusive thoughts that go against values and stir up a lot of anxiety in me. Thanks. I appreciate go against my values. So I appreciate you sharing that. So I'm going to weigh in a little bit on that. So I think we can all relate to first of all, I commend your insight into recognizing that you're having intrusive thoughts that go against your values, and therefore they aren't who you are. They don't. The thoughts aren't who you are. They don't represent what you stand for and what you care about. I think you're already halfway there. Just recognizing that you're having intrusive thoughts. With that, though, they can light your mind on fire and can be really, really difficult to navigate. I've been having a lot of intrusive thoughts of late for various reasons. Maybe I'll share them in upcoming live streams, as I always do. Um, so I think that recognizing and having that insight is the first step. The second step is basically what you said, which is stirring up a lot of anxiety in me. Well, what does that mean, right? And I can only speak for myself in that this week has been pretty anxiety provoking. I've had a lot of intrusive thoughts and some some PTSD and some not intrusive thoughts. Some I'll remember it. related to PTSD. Intrusive thoughts. It's the other thoughts. Anyway, I'll think of it. So anyway, I think that the willingness to sit with the discomfort, and I know I sound like a broken record, and my therapist sounds like a broken record to me, and I'm like, don't you have anything better to say? But she's right. And I think the willingness to sit with the discomfort and move forward in spite of the brain just screaming at us is the way forward. In addition to not trying to push away the thoughts, to try and just say, good on you. Thank you for that piece of information. Thank you for that visual. Thank you for that. The thing that I didn't want to think of. I appreciate that. I'm going to let that be there and just keep moving my feet forward a step at a time. Being willing to feel the anxiety and move in value driven ways anyway. Obviously, the dream is to feel all the good feelings while you have fun things to do, exciting things to do, things to look forward to do. I know for the past couple of weeks, I definitely didn't want some of my thoughts and feelings interfering with the things that I was doing. And at times I was really pissed about that, whether it was time with family or work. I was really upset that my mind was throwing a lot of things at me and I didn't want it to. But I really didn't have a choice. My mind's going to do what it does. That's part of the disorder, recognizing that we can't control our thoughts and feelings, but we can control our focus and behavior. And what does that mean? Well, it means that, I'm going to let the thoughts be there. I'm going to recognize that the emotions and the feelings aren't fact, thoughts aren't either, and then determine how I want to respond to them and what I want to focus on by focusing on the things that I value most and taking action toward those values, whether they be work, spending time with family, spending time with my wife, whatever it is. But that desire and that need to want to feel good, to not have to be fighting that fight, is always present, and it can really kind of get in there and frustrate. I think that we have to not strive for perfection in these moments. Being present minded when OCD is really loud is challenging. And while we want to be 100% present, we may be 20% present. I think the concept of fighting is huge, and that is a major win, regardless of whether we're 20% present or 80% present. So I would say if you're engaging in something value driven, you're struggling to be present, but you are resisting, you are fighting, and you're back and forth. That's a huge win. If you keep doing that, it will continue to get easier and easier as you go. And it's not a straight line, and you'll have good days and bad days, but hopefully the good days become more than the bad days, and you go from there. And I mean, this applies. I liked answering this question in a general perspective because this goes for anyone's intrusive thoughts, whether it's fear of self-harm, health, fear of hurting others, sexually taboo thoughts, intrusive, violent thoughts, really anything, everything that I just described. It doesn't matter the subtype or symptom of OCD. That should be the approach. So Nathan wrote, my depression and OCD are treatment resistant. I would love to hear more about that. It doesn't have to be here, Nathan. I always like to, and as I said, I do think that there is treatment resistance. uh, I think that at least in this moment right now, as to what's to come, I don't know. But I also hate to acknowledge that because I always want to assume that there's hope and there's help and there's access and maybe there's something that's easily tweakable. I know people that tried ERP 3 or 4 times and it didn't work, and then they made a realization or noticed something or tried something different or found that right therapist or incorporated acceptance commitment therapy or dialectical behavioral therapy or cognitive processing, or tried a medication along with it. It's just it is a shame that there's not just one path, right? It's a cocktail of various things for a lot of people. What is that cocktail? What is that formula? I think the formula is out there for everyone. I really, really do. Um, it's just a matter of determining what that formula is. And Sam Fadden at 7:09 p.m. raises an interesting question. So she wrote, does TX resistant relate to unwillingness? I'm assuming you're saying treatment resistant relate to unwillingness. That's a great observation. So, and I'm just want to hit on this. So, in short, no, it doesn't. With that being said, though, I think that this I'm just going to shoot you straight because we always talk bluntly in this space, and you can scream at me. It's a safe space to scream at me. So for me, um, therapy didn't work for the first 10 months. I would have argued that I was treatment resistant. Some therapists argued that I was treatment resistant. And I felt that I was as willing as possible to get better. That was my mindset. I wanted to get better. If you asked me, I said yes. I thought I was doing everything I could to get better, engage in treatment on all of those things. In retrospect, as I started to get better, I wasn't even close to doing everything that I should have been doing. I wasn't willing to be as scared as I had to be in order to get better. Um, but I lacked that insight. And so it's tricky because I know I genuinely wanted to get better and I genuinely worked as hard as I could to get better, not knowing that I was sabotaging myself in the process, not knowing that I was undoing the exposures every time I went home or every time I went back to my room when I was in residential. Um, when I was doing exposures, not knowing that I wasn't fully diving in, or that I was reassuring myself right after I would have an an imaginal exposure. I think there's a lot of insight that has to take place to determine whether or not you're engaging and embracing in the treatment wholeheartedly, especially if it's behavioral treatment like ERP, acceptance commitment therapy, things like that. So it's tricky because I could argue now that I was probably unwilling to go there. I could also argue that I didn't know I was unwilling to go there, and I didn't know I was being unwilling. I thought I was surrendering everything, and it was only in my deepest moments with insight that I realized how much it was like the curtain was pulled back, and I realized how much I was impeding my own process. So, is that treatment resistant? I mean, we get existential a bit here, but is it? It might be because I only knew what I knew, and I knew what I was able to do, and I knew what I was giving was everything. And until I got to that point, I didn't know any different. Um, I think that treatment resistant is a word that is thrown around a lot. Doesn't mean that someone isn't. I believe Nathan, right? I think there are individuals that are treatment resistant, but I think we have to look carefully at what people have tried. If you've done ERP one time for 1 month and it didn't work, I know a lot of people who've been that path and go, oh, I'm treatment resistant. And I go, well, you haven't tried everything yet. You need to try ERP again with somebody else, introduce different modalities of treatment. Maybe you need medication. Um, I think there are lots of options. And I think until someone has tried all of those options in really meaningful ways, um, through certain amounts of time. And I'm sure I'm not the guy to ask, but I'm sure there is clinical criteria for treatment resistance. It's a great topic to talk about. It's coming up a lot here. It'd be great to bring John Hirschfield or John Grayson on to talk about, what determines treatment resistance and what doesn't determine treatment resistance. I'm only speaking from my own personal experience and my own opinions. And I hope I'm not in any way triggering and offending anyone. I think that as someone that self-proclaimed treatment resistant until I wasn't, you know. So I'm in that boat and feel like I can talk to it. But then it does beg that question: is treatment resistant permanent? Right? Was I treatment resistant in those first 10 months, and did I need a certain intervention to occur for then to loosen the machine and allow me to get flexible enough to start engaging in therapy? And is there true resistant, meaning you can do everything and it's just not going to budge for various reasons, until there's new modalities of treatment that are tried or created or what have you. But it's a great question, and I do think in some cases, there are individuals or treatment providers that will say, "Oh yeah, no, it didn't work. They're treatment resistant, and they really, did a month of ERP or tried TMS one time, right? Or got on an SSRI or a medication. They were on it for 3 months. Their OCD stayed the same. And I think that's very different than, going through 10, 12 months of residential dedicated treatment, various treatment. My journey was 17 years of every SSRI, various modalities of treatment until I found ERP. And even then, so I think it was fair of therapists to say he's treatment resistant because I'd already tried so many things. And now I was trying the things that were supposed to work. With that being said, though, if I hadn't gone through that 17 years of doing all the stuff that hadn't worked, would I have been more open to doing the things that had? Would I have had more hope? Would I have had less despair? Would I have been more willing to engage in the process? Would I have been more willing to be open to what people were telling me? I had my defenses up. I was just a big F you to everyone because I felt like everyone had promised me they can help me get better. And then after 17 years, they couldn't, right? Was my treatment resistance because of learned behavior? There's a lot of what if questions here that are valid what if questions. So the answer, unwillingness, maybe, but I would argue that most individuals with OCD don't realize that they're potentially not as willing as they should be because it's terrifying to engage in treatment and therapy. So it's definitely tricky, but it's a great question to ask. And I think that all of this can exist and be teased out. Ultimately though, I wouldn't I wouldn't get too hung up on this idea of treatment resistance, because at the end of the day, we all want a meaningful, beautiful, value driven life. That is our goal. And really, it doesn't matter whether you have OCD or any other mental illness or physical illness. That is what we all want. That is all what we dream of and strive toward. Words are helpful. So when I think treatment resistant, I think there's nothing for me. And this is the life that I have to live. And I'm just unwilling to accept that. I think we have to give hope. We have to give motivation, regardless if someone's tried everything. I think you can't give up, because I think that if you give up, you're definitely done. And as long as you keep trying, you may find a doorway that takes you to that place where you want to be. And I know for me, I had an incredible support system that helped me not give up and helped me get there. I recognize that not everybody has that. I want to be that support system to as many people as possible. I know the IOCDF wants to support as many people as possible. So I like to use the word unwillingness very carefully, because I don't think it's a conscious decision in 90% of individuals that are legitimately and genuinely trying to get better. But I think we should keep trying, because there's all kinds of, and if you tried everything and people have told you you're treatment resistant or your OCD is just too bad, look at clinical trials. There's so many going out there, from ketamine to psilocybin to TMS to DBS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, deep brain stimulation, which more is intrusive surgery. There's lots of options, and some of those more biological and more invasive options will look at your history, look at what you've done, determine if there's been a significant amount of follow through in different modalities of treatment before even considering something like surgery. But if anybody asked me, oh, you asked me about treatment resistance, but if someone specifically said I'm treatment resistant, there's no hope for me, I would argue with that, only because I do think there are answers to everyone out there. I think we just have to keep hunting. It sucks that it's harder for some, super hard for me. I understand and I relate to that. I may not get your journey specifically, but I do relate the angst and the pain and the hurt of feeling like there's no answers and watching other people get better and you're not. I get that. But we are here to provide hope and let you know that we'll find the answers. And it may be maybe tomorrow, it may be a year from now, maybe 5 years from now. And you may be thinking, how can I possibly wait that long? And the answer is because you want to, because you're strong, because we can do it together. So, okay. Great questions though. Thank you. So Nathan wrote, ketamine shots didn't help at all. So Nathan, I would start by asking, have you done what behavioral treatments have you tried? Have you done exposure and response prevention? Have you done acceptance commitment therapy? Have you tried anything else? I see you talked about ketamine and Spravato. TMS is expensive, although there are some TMS trials, depending on where you are. Nathan, oh, you're in Athens. There's a TMS trial at Cornell in New York. I think it's still open. I don't think it's still enrolled. And if you are a candidate, they will travel you there. It's also rapid TMS, so it's a 5 or 6 day trial. It's not 6 weeks, multiple. So if you want to just Google Cornell TMS study, I honestly don't know if it's still going on, but I can definitely also give my email address out at the end and we can connect. But there's actually a ton of different TMS clinical trials, and if you're, if access to care because of financial reasons, I think clinical trial, and you've tried other things, clinical trials are always a potential possibility to access. Teresa writes, with having health anxiety OCD, how would you suggest communicating to healthcare workers that think everything you're feeling is just OCD, like the little boy that cries wolf? Great question. 7:13 p.m. Teresa, let me take a drink of water. Hydration is very important when hosting OCD live streams. So I relate to this, and I've been heavily stigmatized by doctors. I think that it's twofold, and I may not give you the answer that you necessarily want to hear. I think that doctors have to look at our history and take what we're saying in the present right now and give us the benefit of the doubt, because if they don't, that's bullshit. I was stigmatized last summer at my physical. Like, I was going over a list of things that I wanted to address, and he looked at my history and went, "That's your anxiety." I'm like, "Dude, you've never met me, first of all. You know nothing about me. You don't know where I am in my recovery journey. So go F yourself." He then sent me home with, I've told this story before, but for those of you who haven't heard, he then sent me home with a pamphlet on how to treat my OCD at home. I was just like, this guy. So I think that healthcare workers definitely need to take seriously what you're saying, right? I also think, though, that it is our responsibility to be willing to sit with certain amounts of discomfort. Um, so I have a test coming up next week, um, because I've had some heartburn, some burning in my chest, right? So there's some things that they're looking for, and I think when they were scheduling me, I wanted to get it faster because I wanted answers and I was uncomfortable. So, I sent a message through the portal and I said, "Hey, I'd love to see if we can get this scheduled any faster. Let me know." Went 3 or 4 days. I didn't hear. I then called the office. I said, I'd really like to get this scheduled. Um, you know, I'm uncomfortable. I'd like to have some answers. They said, "Great, let's connect you with the testing place, and they'll be in touch in 3 to 5 days." Okay, and look, the healthcare system sucks anyway, so this is going to be the process for most people. And so after 3 days, I called. "Hey, we haven't gotten the order yet." Called the doctor, said, "Hey, they haven't gotten the order yet." I feel like this was appropriate. I feel like that I would ask myself, what would somebody without health anxiety do in this? You have to advocate for yourself, right? I don't think, however, that 5 emails in one day is appropriate. I don't think that multiple phone calls in a day is appropriate. I don't think that, and not to say that there's judgment, but to say that they're going to respond in a way that isn't going to be the way you like it, because they're assuming that you're being anxious. I think that it's okay to be anxious. I think that it's okay to be worried. Okay, tail, tail, tail warning. Okay, here, sit right here. Okay, there you go. I think that it's valid to want answers, and I know I do quickly. And sometimes I'll be honest with my doctors and say, "Look, I have anxiety, I have OCD, I get really nervous around tests and things like that. So, when you get answers, if you can give them to me on the quicker side, if available, I'd really appreciate that." But then I drop it and then I leave it. A lot of times I don't necessarily have a lot of insight when it comes to health anxiety and medical stuff, and I really lean on my therapist to say, "Here's what I want to do. Here's where I want to go. Here's what I want to say." And she'll kind of say, like, "Look, it's your thing. I can't tell you what to do, but here's what I would do. I would do this, and then I would say this, and then I would wait this amount of time." And so I think having some guidance and a baseline is really, really helpful. So you strike that balance between advocating for yourself, rightfully so, because they drop balls all the time, and you have to stay on top of it, and at the same time, not overly communicating. And that was just in regards to tests. I think in regards to, like, trusting that a CT scan is right, trusting that the blood work is right. What if the doctor gave you an incorrect opinion? What if they missed something? I think that we have to be willing to acknowledge, or at least to have as much insight as possible around what's OCD and what isn't. We have to take doctors at their word. And I do know, I understand that, like, you hear that person that said, "I wouldn't settle. I knew something was wrong. I went to 4 different doctors, and guess what? They found the thing." Like, I hear that and I go, "Oh, I should be doing that too." But I also recognize that I have OCD. And so I also have to weigh, like, what's healthiest for me mentally and what's healthiest for me physically. I'll give you a perfect example. About 2 years ago, I had a twitch in my tongue. It was really weird. It was like the left side of my tongue was twitching and I was having trouble talking. And I went to the doctor and they did all the tests and it was still happening. And then they sent me to a neurologist, and I Googled and was convinced I had everything, as we do. I had everything and I had 3 weeks to live, and the GoFundMe page was started. Um, the the appointment for the neurologist was, I think, 3 weeks out, and of course that killed me. But I couldn't get in earlier, and I just accepted it. Within a week, it went away after 3 weeks of happening, and by the time I went to the doctor, it had been gone about 2.5 weeks. So I went there fully expecting him to say, uh, "Yeah, I don't know, stress, something that's weird. If it happens again, let me know." But he said, "That's strange. I've never heard of that before," which is not what you want to hear a doctor say. and I'd like for you to get an MRI. Well, for those of you that know my story, know that when I was at my worst, I got multiple CAT scans and MRIs every week, multiple. I hadn't had an MRI or a CAT scan since 2010. And I knew that doing that would be very triggering, and not from an avoidance perspective, just from there was a lot of trauma around that. So the question I kept asking myself was, God, I would love the reassurance around knowing if it's something. And, he was like, I'm pretty sure this isn't it, but just to be safe, to give you reassurance and peace of mind, let's do this MRI. So I talked to my therapist, I talked to my psychiatrist, and I talked to a friend who was a neurologist. And I said, here's what's going on, but it went away. And they said, look, if you want total reassurance, get the MRI, but went away. There were no other symptoms. We think it was a fluke or stress, and you'll probably be okay. And I thought about that, and I thought about my mental health around getting this MRI that I probably didn't need, but everybody's like, the doctor's covering his ass and blah, 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 blah. And I decided not to get it, knowing that I was potentially risking something in my head that was happening, or that was occurring, but willing to, my mental health was more in jeopardy in that moment. And yeah, needless to say, it came back the next year at the same time, speaking of anniversaries, and no rhyme or reason. And I was like, okay, and I regretted not getting the MRI, but I decided to sit with it, and it went away 2 weeks later, and I haven't had it since, and that was like 2 years ago. So I think it's stress. Regardless, I think that we have to do our best to resist the ability, to resist the compulsion or the need to get answers quickly, or to make sure that they were right, or make sure they saw it correctly. We can put ourselves in a position where medical professionals aren't willing to hear, aren't willing to take our calls, aren't willing to hear from us, and really kind of screw ourselves over. So, if we don't know what that is, if you recognize that you may not have that insight at the time, I think it's worth it to talk to somebody that you trust, a friend, somebody that also knows about your health anxiety, to be able to say, here's what I want to do. Is this something you would do? Is this healthy? Is this how normal behavior would go, just to mitigate the complication of people just not taking you seriously? Good questions, though. Um, Matt Bannister at 7:15 p.m. I am behind. I need to speed this up. I'm wordy today. It's been a minute. It's good to see everyone. I've had a really rough few weeks with different triggers, but even though the emotions are very icky, I'm still reaching toward my values no matter what, like I am doing right now, connecting with the best community in the world. And there's nothing more healing than that. Matt Bannister, always having the best insights. For the record, Matt, it's also okay to not be okay. You always come here so positive and so happy, but we're also happy to meet you where you're at. Your insights are always invaluable, and we're always grateful. And I know they help me as well as help everyone in the room on every live stream. So we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. But with that, always know that this is a safe space to feel anything that you're feeling, to be present as you are, and we love you, man. All right, let's see here. So at 7:18 p.m., Phil wrote, thank you for responding. Great response. Yeah, if someone is told, like I was too, that they're treatment resistant without further information, it can actually be a terrifying prospect that the future has nothing in it beyond chronic OCD. Yep, I'm or whoever is beyond help, if that makes sense. When a pretty callous psychiatrist said it to me, my catastrophic thinking went, somehow I was special, but not in a good way, and why were others improve? Yeah, 100%. I relate to that, and I got that same feedback. And I think, before we're going to make that determination on someone, there has to be significant due diligence and a lot of expertise going into that. And even then, I wouldn't give up, because you just don't know. Cash in the house. Amy at 7:20 p.m. Any tips on approaching my 21-year-old son with regarding to considering treatment for his OCD and now his depression? He doesn't want to talk about it. Taking meds for OCD, fluoxamine, but doesn't seem to work. Heartbreaking to watch. Thank you. Hi, Amy. Thank you for sharing so much. And I'm sure as a mom, it's really hard to watch that. I know for my mom, it was really hard to watch as well, having an adult son and seeing the challenges that they're facing. And the answer is yes. So, if there's an unwillingness to seek treatment, obviously he's not under 18, so you can't force him to go. We've done some really good live streams on family and interaction and how to approach loved ones about getting treatment, talking about their OCD. I'm wondering, A, is he willing to acknowledge that he has OCD? B, he is taking a medication, and that's understandable that it probably isn't that effective for OCD, which many times it isn't. So a higher level, just a behavioral intervention would probably be really helpful. Um, I think when you're in your late teens, early 20s, I think the idea of acknowledging that you have a disorder is really difficult, although it is at any age. I think like looking at having to go to therapy or treatment and what that may interfere with, and not seeing the forest through the trees, meaning not understanding what already is being taken away from your life. So a couple things. One is you can always start with tossing out websites, whether it's the IOCDF or videos. Those are usually the easiest ways, whether it's a article or a video of someone in the public, sports, entertainment, singer that has talked about it, just to let them know that they're not alone. We have really great young adult support groups and things like that. Um, we can we can have advocates reach out as well. The idea is to not make it as he's going to feel stigmatized by an approach that you have OCD and you need treatment, and automatically get defensive. The goal in the approach is to help your son make the decision himself that this is something he needs, and this is something he should do. So I think having conversations about OCD that aren't about OCD. So like something like I don't something to the effect of not going and saying, "Hey, I really like to talk about your OCD. You really need help." Something more along the lines of, "Yeah, I'm noticing you're not doing X, and I know you really love that. What's going on? I'm noticing that you left school, or you're not doing that sports team anymore, or your grades are slipping, or whatever OCD is taking away. Those are places to help individuals reflect on and help them realize that they're not living the life they want to, because when you realize what OCD is taking away and what it can potentially take away, then the motivation to move on it becomes greater. So I think helping your son understand through not talking about OCD at all, but saying like, well, don't, hey, I know you love X. Why don't you go try X? Well, I'm nervous and I'm scared and I have this thing and there's this compulsion and it keeps me from doing that, and maybe exploring that a little further. In addition to, hey, well, check out this article. It's a really great article. Yeah, Camila Cabello has OCD and spoke about it. Luke Combs, country singer, came out with OCD. Send an email, drop it in a text. Your son may say F you in the moment and then, pull it up at 2 a.m. because they kind of come around. There's some really great, like I said, live streams the IOCDF has put on. We can definitely send you some links on how to talk to your kids. And also, I don't know if Anxiety in the Classroom has some good content as well, but we can definitely direct you in some right places if you want to email the IOCDF, or you can email me when I give out my email at the end. But those are always good places to start, is really to try to have a conversation about it without having a conversation about it. And also not having the conversation when someone is struggling or triggered, because they're automatically going to get pissed and defensive, right? It's maybe when your son's having a good day or they're over for dinner and everything's going well and great. Again, not bringing up OCD at all, simply bringing up like, I remember you loved that thing. What happened? And this conversation could evolve over months, but the idea is to, again, help someone make the realization themselves. There are also more direct pressures that can be applied to young adults. And this would be under the care of a psychologist or a clinician, which would be things like, are you paying for his cell phone? Are you paying for his food? Does he live at home? You then have power over that, right? And there you can add systematic pressure to move them toward treatment and not help reassure. So the B portion of this long-winded answer is, just because he's unwilling to seek treatment doesn't mean that you can't. So if you feel like you need answers, if you're feeling lost, if you're feeling uncertain about how to manage your son and what he's asking, you can always reach out to an OCD specialist and a clinician, tell them what you're going through, and they can also help guide you to help your son come around. So those are my two suggestions. Great question though, Amy. Thank you. Pryor's production, 7:22 p.m. How does someone sit with that discomfort? I have a really hard time doing nothing, but I always feel like I'm doing compulsions when I can't sit still. Yeah, I struggle with the word. I say it, which is kind of, you got to sit with it. What does that really mean? I don't think it literally means sitting in a chair with it. I think that it means being willing to accept the discomfort, whether they're thoughts or feelings, and moving forward in a value driven way without the expectation that you're going to feel good doing it. So that can look like I'm triggered that this chicken that I ate is going to give me food poisoning. What if I throw up, but I've got to go on this date? So instead of canceling the date in case I get sick and embarrass myself, which would be avoidance and a compulsion, I'm going to go on this date. I may not feel great. It is a first impression. God, that's embarrassing, but I'm not going to give in to my OCD. I'm going to let these thoughts be there. And I'm going to try and be as present as possible. And I'm going to try to be as present as possible with these feelings. And maybe they're anxious. Maybe I do feel a little nauseous because part of anxiety is nausea, right? So I'm going to go do this thing and maybe I'm uncomfortable during it, but that's okay because at essence, the value driven decision is to go on this date, even with how I feel. So clinicians will call it opposite action, but the idea of doing the opposite of how you feel, no different than people who go to the gym when they don't feel like it because they know working out is in their best interest. I don't feel like this is the last thing I feel like, but I'm going to go do it anyway because I know it's important to me. And doing value driven things in spite of OCD and thoughts and feelings is pretty much the exact same thing. So I mean, there are lots of skills and tools, and it takes practice. Nobody's saying you just have the realization that you should feel those feelings and think those thoughts and go do something. Like, it's definitely not that easy. And I think it is an ongoing struggle that we are great at it sometimes and awful at it other times. And that is so valid. And I think that sometimes I'm really good at doing opposite action, engaging in value driven decisions, despite me being really triggered. And other times it's very challenging. I would like to say that I'm pretty good at it now. I'm pretty good at not avoiding. I'm pretty good at engaging 80 to 90% of the time in something important to me. I'm not saying I'm 100% present during that time, but I'm in action. My body is moving. Bring the body and the mind will follow. So I think in essence, at least for me, that's what kind of sitting with that discomfort looks like. It just means acting in accordance with your values, despite what you're thinking or how you feel. With the understanding that you're hopefully retraining your brain to think differently in the long term. So if your expectation is to do the opposite, thinking you'll feel better at the end of the day, most likely you're not going to feel that way. Not to say if you don't, that's icing. That's fantastic. If you feel like crap, you go do something and feel great afterwards. And like, I'm so glad I did that. That's a great win. Absolutely. If you come home and you're like, oh my God, that was exhausting. That was the hardest thing I ever did. You may think that, but you go to bed and you've taught your brain that you are capable of physically moving forward, despite how paralyzing your thoughts and feelings are. And continually telling that to your brain, giving your brain that feedback will in turn make it easier and easier to do those things. And so those are really important, even if they're not totally conscious decisions, even if the results aren't totally conscious in the moment. You come home, you feel like crap, you're exhausted. The message to your brain is, I did it. I got out, I did something hard. And each time you do it, it gets systematically and exponentially easier, but it does take time. Great question, though. Let's see, I'm going to scroll down a little bit just to see. I see your question, Robert, at 7:23. I'm going to hang tight on that because diffusion is a really interesting conversation, but want to just make sure I'm not missing anything. And my comments just, when I start to scroll down, it shifts and I lose everything, which is annoying. Now I have to find my place. Please hold. There's Amy's question. Oh, there's Pryor's question. Okay, perfect. So there's Robert. There's your question, 7:23 p.m. Let's go ahead and answer Robert's question. Katie's texting me. She's like, diffusion, let's talk about it. I want to help. All right. So Katie, if you're on, this, I know are you coming on the stream? No. Okay. All right. So this special request goes out to my wife, Katie. Some weird radio show OCD live stream. Like, we just throw out special subtype requests. Has anyone here done any cognitive diffusion that compartmentalizes the physical symptoms of fear as separate from their thoughts, revealing the physical as the truly intrusive part? Katie? Yeah? You going to answer that? No, I'm answering emails. I'm just listening to you. You're listening? I thought you were on the thread. No, I'm just listening live in the other room. Ay. Two advocates in one house. There's a sitcom. Okay, so let me rethink through this because I thought she had answers to this. Has anyone ever done any cognitive diffusion that compartmentalizes the physical symptoms of fear as separate from the thoughts, revealing the physical as the truly intrusive part. I think that's a really interesting concept, Robert. I don't know that I've done that. I mean, I've done diffusion as part of acceptance commitment therapy and trying to separate, my thoughts from my feelings and create space between my brain and my thoughts, so I can see the space in between and recognize that I can see more than just the thoughts themselves. Compartmentalizing the physical symptoms of fear as separate from the thoughts, revealing the physical as the truly intrusive part. That's an interesting. I'm curious. Where is that a Robert Spence thing? Did you hear that from? Because I'm curious to learn more because I want to dive into it. I don't know that I've done that, but I want to know more. So Robert, tell me more because that's really interesting. Um, I love Lana wrote. Can you elaborate, Robert? So thank you. I'm glad I'm not the only one, but no, I definitely want to know. Maybe he elaborated. Ah, there's his elaboration. 7:28 p.m. Letting the thoughts be on the sidelines and objectifying the physical symptoms, experiencing them out. Okay. So yes, the answer is in short yes, which is really, let me see if you said anything else. Um, okay, if you have a headache, the therapist might ask, where is the ache? How big is it? What color is it? Which works really well. I've done that before for headaches. So I think that in terms of like letting the thoughts be on the sideline and objectifying the physical symptoms, I think that's really important. I think that experiencing, so a lot of times, obviously, so the cycle is the thought triggers the feeling, which triggers the compulsion and or the response and the prevention, and the focus and the action. So if we have the thought and then that in turn translates to a feeling, it's oftentimes the feeling that creates the action. So being able to experience, as you say, and objectify that feeling is can be really effective, because in most people it's the feeling that causes them to take action. The thought itself can be scary and triggering. It is oftentimes the feeling of discomfort and or any other feeling that you may experience that reinforces the thought, makes that thought feel real, and then you engage in, a compulsion to get rid of that feeling and thought. That isn't to say that you can't have a thought without a feeling and compulse, but most of the time, I would say 99.9% of the time, there is a feeling that accompanies the thought, whether it's fear, whether it's a physiological symptom like nausea, dizziness, headache, stress, sweating, heartbeat, whatever it is, there is a feeling of discomfort. I think being able to there it is, sit with that feeling, feel where that feeling is, whether it's in your chest, is it in your stomach, is it in your head, um, understanding when you're triggered by your thoughts, what feelings do you experience, what physical symptomatology do you experience, and then acknowledging where that place is and sitting with it and being with it and not trying to get it away can be a really effective strategy for navigating, because in essence, the feeling isn't dangerous. It can feel dangerous, but it isn't actually dangerous. Neither is the thought. The thought is a thought. Thought is no different than thinking I'm a banana. I've always said that. I love that. I love saying I'm a banana because I'm not a banana. So a thought's a thought. I think so many times our feelings are powerful, our feelings are deceiving and deceitful, and many times our feelings are an illusion, in regards to OCD. So I think understanding where the feelings are coming from, how they manifest in you, and better understanding where they are and being willing to embrace and sit with and live with those feelings wherever they are in your body, can be a really crucial strategy in navigating the whole of OCD. And I think you raise a great point. I think that's a crucial part of ERP. Honestly, is sitting with the discomfort. That's what sitting with the discomfort means. I think ACT, acceptance commitment therapy, and some of the other modalities of treatment dive way deeper into better understanding what those feelings are, how they manifest, where they sit in your body, and better understanding what they mean. Um, and then once you have those feelings, not only do you habituate, but you feel less scared of them because you recognize them, you see what they are, and you can call them out for what they are, and you're willing to do the things that are important to you in spite of those feelings, which can be really intense. So, great question, and thank you for the clarification. We are coming up on 8 o'clock, so I'm going to scroll down to one more question if Amanda doesn't kill me. Um, Amy Ellickson raises a great point. It touches on on the treatment resistant conversation. She wrote at 7:32 p.m. Sometimes people get treatment from someone claiming to be an OCD specialist, but they aren't. A lot of individuals get cognitive behavioral therapy, but they don't get exposure and response prevention. And I hear from a lot of folks going, I'm treatment resistant or my OCD didn't get better, and I did CBT. And always my follow up question is, but did you do ERP? Um, all ERP is CBT, but not all CBT is ERP. And even internationally, they call ERP CBT, which can be confusing. So, in terms of treatment, I think that's important to acknowledge that in terms of cognitive behavioral treatment, there's a lot of different cognitive behavioral treatments. Many are very effective for OCD, but just because you've done CBT doesn't mean you've done ERP or ACT or any of the other exposure-based treatments. So, file that, because if you're interviewing a clinician or an expert, and they say we do cognitive behavioral therapy, you want to break that down even further and say, yes, but do you do exposure and response prevention? Because that's the sweet stuff. Um, all right. We're closing in at 8:01. Just going to scroll down a little more. Gosh, there's so many great comments. There's not even, there's so, I just want to read out all the comments, which are fantastic. Um, you guys are so good at supporting one another. Um, and just really, I don't know. I don't worry. It sounds silly, but I don't worry as much about, getting to all the questions, although my goal is to always get to all the questions, but I don't worry because I know that everybody is being supported in the meantime. Um, you guys are fantastic at supporting one another, so thank you for being so knowledgeable and so rock stars. Um, all right, I think that's it. I may have missed somebody's question. I did a quick scroll. I apologize if I did. We have some important. Hey, Lizette, good to see you. We can also call out Katie for uh, in a what's the word, for not representing herself accurately, suggesting that she was on here, suggesting that she was willing to participate in this conversation, and yet bugging in the last moment. She's yelling at me and laughing right now, but sometimes it's hard to own your stuff, and let's just say right now that she misled us. And being misled is a lot like OCD. So OCD can mislead us. So just saying.
I'm literally answering emails from people with OCD right now.
See, she couldn't
Don't
stand it.
mislead the crowd.
She had to make an appearance.
Okay. Hi.
Bye. Love you. Special appearance by Katie, ladies and gentlemen. We're married, in case you were wondering, or I just broke into her house to do a live stream. Either way, it's weird. All right. So quickly, I want to thank the IOCDF and Amanda for being behind the scenes. Tomorrow, we have a research roundtable at 12 p.m. on, I think it's sleep and OCD with Kyle and the gang. Don't miss that. Thursday is supporting our families at 7 p.m. So we have a full week of live content. She does always. I love it. Cash gave you an eye roll, Katie. Finally, he's got a new target. So yes, great live streams tomorrow and Thursday. As always, IOCDF is a donor-sponsored nonprofit. Please consider making a donation. Registration for the online BDD conference is now open. The online BDD conference offers an opportunity for professionals to learn how to treat individuals with body dysmorphic disorder. You can learn more and register today at iocdf.org/BDDcon. Also, registration for the Faith and OCD conference is also open. You can join us for this collaborative conversation between faith leaders, mental health providers, and the OCD community. You can visit iocdf.org/conferences. On a side note, I hope the IOCDF doesn't get charged for / anything, because they create a lot of new website domains, and I was just tossing that out there. Hopefully they have a buy one, get 100 free. Finally, please subscribe and follow on all the social media so you're notified when we go live. You can also check out our schedule on iocdf.org/peace of mind. And finally, if you need resources or looking for a therapist, you can always visit iocdf.org or email the IOCDF at info@iocdf.org. Finally, if you'd like to touch base with me, and I apologize if I haven't gotten back to your emails recently, please don't hate me or crucify me or criticize. I know Cash is rolling his eyes again. You can email me at justethan@iocdf.org. Yes, thank you, Robert. Wishing you, thank you for being an awesome thank you for being an awesome community tonight, being kind, considerate, helpful. and supporting one another and myself. This is always such a healing hour. Check us out tomorrow. I will be back. I thought it was next week, but it might be the following week. Regardless, check your schedules. There'll be emails and posts and all the things. So with that, thanks for spending your Tuesday evening with me. Stay safe, stay vigilant, have a wonderful day. Feel the feels. Don't let OCD off the hook. And we'll see you next time. Have a beautiful evening. Good night.